Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. There's one question people ask me on a regular basis. It's about calming down young children with herbs. You know, they're hyperactive in the evening and then they don't sleep well. So is there a gentle mix of herbs we could use to help a child relax at the end of a long day? I'll give you my favorite herbs here, and I think you already know some of them. You won't be surprised. They're used in many traditions to cool down a hot and overactive nervous system. But before we dive in, I think we need to ask ourselves this question. Why should we try to calm down these children? Is there an imbalance we need to address, or is the child simply going through normal energy bursts? And I mean, it's a difficult question because our environment has changed tremendously. In the past, children had the opportunity to walk to school, to play outside after school. And here in France, they were outdoors all day Wednesday because it was a day off in primary school. And during the weekend, our parents told us to get the heck out of the house and, just be back on time for dinner. Well, today, everything has been completely turned upside down. We live mostly indoors, and children have to stay seated in the car or in the bus, and at school they have to sit for so many hours, then in the cafeteria, and the same in the evening when they get home. There's homework and piano lessons and games and screens, sitting and more sitting, maybe with a bit of sports in between. So what happens when you take children bursting with energy and you plop them on a chair for the whole day? Well, after a while, they just blow a fuse. They don't have the opportunity to just be kids. And, that overflowing energy has to come out somehow. So part of the situation today is something we've created. And if we want to solve the situation, it's going to be up to us, as a society, to solve it. And when you think about it, giving a spoonful of syrup to a kid isn't going to fix that disconnect that we have created. Disconnect between our needs as constantly moving animals and our current environment. Now, I'm not denying ADHD or other conditions that are making life very difficult for children and parents. And, I don't have the global solutions. I'm not here to give lessons because I have 3 grown-up sons and they went through the traditional school system. Some of them today, they work at a desk, right? So, I'm just saying we need to keep talking about this as a group, as a society. Okay, so now I'm going to place myself in a fairly healthy context. A child who has managed to maintain a relatively balanced life. He does physical activities. He has the opportunity to get outside. He has a relatively balanced nutrition maybe, but despite all of that, he or she struggles to calm down in the evening, and this affects the sleep quality, and then we enter a vicious cycle, fatigue, restlessness, excitability, more disrupted sleep, more fatigue, etc. I'm going to present 4 plants that I love, very gentle and well suited to children. At what age can you start to use these plants? Well, there's no consensus today. And I know that's pretty frustrating, and we're always a bit hesitant with children. And, that's normal. Health authorities will always take a very conservative position. European authorities, for instance, they explain that there isn't enough data to prove the safety of herbs before the age of 12, which is, in my opinion, an extreme precautionary principle that leads to paralysis. Some herbalists will tell you to start at 6 or 7 years old. Again, not to take too much risk. And once I heard, I think it was an interview or maybe in a book of Aviva Romm, an American physician that you may have heard of, specializing in women's and children's health. I would need to double check, but I think she uses these plants in children starting at 3 to 6 months of age. So you see there's a wide variation of opinion. Frankly, these are gentle plants that we've used in our tradition with young children, and I use them with my own kids starting when they were maybe 1 or 2 years old without hesitation. But I prefer to give you all the information so that you can make your own decision. Keep in mind also that the plant quality will determine whether they work or not. And here in France, we try to go more and more local and buy from local growers and pickers to make sure that the path from the living plants to the cup is as short as possible. I also want to encourage you to have some of these plants in your garden or your balcony. They're very easy to grow, and it's a wonderful project for kids. You know, sowing the little seeds and transplanting, watering, taking care of the plants, and then going to pick a few leaves of flowers to prepare herbal products. That's part of the experience, and it makes them realize that nature nourishes and cares for us, and it makes them more involved in life and more responsible. The form that I recommend, which may surprise you a bit, is a cup of herbal tea. This is grounded in the French herbal tradition. And I know we got used to little drops or syrups or gummies maybe to make it easier and tastier for kids. But in our past, kids drank a cup of herbal tea on a regular basis. It's doable with the plants that I will present, and you can add a little honey if necessary to make it more drinkable. In general, it's always good to take these plants over days or weeks without interruption to take advantage of the compounding effect of herbs. But you can also give them occasionally. They work that way too. That said, giving them without interruptions for at least, say, a couple of weeks is much better. Meanwhile, you observe whether the situation improves or not. And you can combine both approaches too. You know, you can do a course lasting a couple of weeks at times when the child seems particularly agitated, and then for the rest of the time, use them as needed, you know, one day here, one day there. Another point, I recommend making it a little ritual for everybody in the house, adults and children included. And after all, a little cup of relaxing herbal tea at the end of the day, I mean, what do you think? Everybody can benefit, right? And it will go much better with the child if everyone is drinking the tea rather than if he or she is the only one who has to drink that brew. A quick pause to let you know that you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, now let's talk about the actual herbs. The first one I'm proposing is German chamomile. In the US, herbalists just use the term chamomile. But here in France, we make the distinction between German chamomile, Matricaria recutita, and Roman chamomile, Chamomilium nobile. The first one is great for kids. Quite sweet, aromatic, tasting a bit like honey, with some bitterness coming out if you put too much in the cup or if you let it infuse for too long. But overall, it makes a very pleasant herbal tea. Roman chamomile, though, is quite bitter. It's got a very flowery and lovely smell, very strong, almost intoxicating fragrance, but the taste is quite bitter, so not ideal for kids. There's even a third type that we call great chamomile in France, which is actually feverfew, Tanacetum parthenium. I don't think this term great chamomile is used in English-speaking countries, maybe just in France. And feverfew is definitely not appropriate here for kids because, first of all, it's not considered a calming herb. And second, because it's pretty harsh to drink, very bitter with a camphor taste. So back to German chamomile, which I'm recommending here. We use the flowers fresh or dried. If you have them in your garden, make yourself a cup of tea with the fresh flowers and you'll see how good it tastes when it's fresh. It's a real pleasure. If you don't have it in your garden, make sure you buy from a quality supplier. And if you receive flowers that are all crushed in your bag and have no smell, then that's a bad start. They should have a nice color, a good smell, with a soft honey-like sweet fragrance. And you should see some white, some yellow, and a bit of green. And it should be whole flowers dried. And please avoid supermarket tea bags like the plague. The preparation you'll make for a child is 1 cup of tea with a heaped teaspoon of the flowers. You pour hot water over it, ideally around 160 to 195 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 80 to 90 degrees Celsius, not boiling, because this is a very subtle aromatic plant. So let it steep covered for barely 3 to 4 minutes, because the longer it steeps, the more you risk drawing out a certain bitterness. After that, you can add a little bit of liquid honey if needed. It's simply delicious, one of the best teas you can make. You offer this tea when the child needs to come down, maybe late afternoon, maybe early evening, just not too close to bedtime, because otherwise you risk having him or her get up, go to the bathroom during the night. As for precautions, don't give it to your child if they have an allergy to plants in the Asteraceae family. Another plant that I love is lemon balm. It doesn't have the same taste at all. It's rather lemony, but very pleasant too. It's a perennial plant that's very easy to grow in the garden. It doesn't have a very long life for a perennial, and generally you keep it for a few years, but it produces abundantly. It loves the sun, regular watering. You can have it in a pot, and it will generally give you a large quantity of leaves. We use the leaf, which we will harvest fresh. You put a pinch in the cup, and here you'll need to experiment with the exact quantity. The goal is to have enough in the cup for a pleasant lemony taste, not too strong for the child. You let it steep covered for 3 to 4 minutes, that's enough, and then you filter and you have the child drink it at the right moment. I love lemon balm because it works both on the mental hyperexcitability and the digestive tract. And some children, when they're a bit stressed, they quickly get a little stomach ache or maybe disrupted digestion. If your child has a similar profile, then lemon balm will relax both the belly and the mind, and German chamomile will actually do that too. I'm not going to tell you to buy the dried plant, so dried lemon balm from herbal shops. In fact, dried lemon balm is generally very disappointing unless you've dried it yourself and it's at most a few months old. My third plant is the orange tree, or more precisely, the orange blossom. Orange blossom hydrosol is a classic French remedy for overexcited kids, although here I will be talking about a simple tea of the flowers. And I don't know if you will find it in herbal stores in your country. Here in France, we buy the dried flower buds in herb stores, and it's the flower buds from Citrus aurantium, which is actually the bitter orange tree. It smells really good. I love it. You use a pinch of these flowers and you let it steep in the cup covered. You'll need to sweeten it a little bit with honey to make it go down better. If the tea doesn't go over well, you also have what's called orange blossom hydrosol, which is a distilled form, very aromatic preparation. It's not the essential oil, which is very concentrated. It's the hydrosol. It's a watery preparation that retains a lot of the aromatic. Be careful though, we're not talking about the orange blossom water you can find in the baking aisle of your supermarket, which is loaded with artificial flavors. Here we're talking about real orange blossom hydrosol. You will need to go to a herbal store to find it. And you generally use 1 teaspoon mixed in a glass of cold water, and you have the child drink it. That's it. Pretty simple. My fourth plant is linden, that big tree you see on some village squares in France and other countries. We use the dried flower clusters, which includes a large bract, then a stem, and a few little flowers at the end. The whole thing, right? And it makes an incredibly gentle tea. You use a pinch of the dried flowers per cup, and you put enough for a good sweet taste. One interesting aspect of Linden, I don't know if you knew, but it calms many people down, but in some it has the opposite effect. It can excite them. It is not very common, but it may happen. And in France, we give the following piece of advice. We say you let it steep for a fairly short time, 2 to 3 minutes, to avoid this problem. Now, don't worry too much about it. It doesn't happen very often, but it's good to keep that in mind. Okay, what about lavender? So in France, we do herbal teas of lavender, and we use the flowers of lavender angustifolia. That's what we call true lavender. Not that the other ones are fake, it's just that this one is considered the official medicinal one. And it has the least problematic chemotype in the essential oil part. Although we're not talking about the essential oil here, we're talking about the whole plant. Anyway, many people often assume that it makes a mild tasting tea for kids. Well, not really. It's actually a strong tasting plant. It is a safe plant, especially if you use lavender angustifolia, very calming while also giving a certain mental clarity. But for kids, either you add a tiny bit of the flowers to a herbal mix containing other plants, or you just use the other plants we talked about. They have a much better taste. So that's my calming plants. There are others, of course, but let's keep it simple. You have plenty to work with these 4. As you probably noticed, I encourage you to go back to herbal teas. They're a wonderful form. We stay close to the plants, to the living beings. It allows us to do quality control because we can see the plant, we can touch it, we can smell it before it goes into the cup. Our children need to relearn to appreciate it, or at least tolerate herbal teas. And very often they don't love it. I mean, they do it to please us, the parents. Some do enjoy them, but I would say that's a minority. But the interesting thing, I'll tell you, is that later it will come back into their life. They will appreciate them. And when they're maybe in their 20s or 30s, and it will become a major tool for their health. So the daily herbal tea is important. It's like a ritual. And you can mix all the plants I talked about. For instance, you can make a cup of tea with a mix of fresh lemon balm straight from the garden and dried German chamomile flowers, and then you add a pinch of dried linden flowers. Super good. Or you do a cup of chamomile tea and you add a teaspoon of orange blossom hydrosol into the cup. Wonderful too. There are many variations possible. You could use 1 little cup when they come back from school, and then another small cup a little later, not too close to bedtime. That's it, friends. Thanks for being here, and I will see you very soon for another episode of The French Herbal.